This is the last calm moment for Kristil Krug's mother. In just seconds, she'll walk into this garage and discover her 43-year-old daughter's lifeless body. And while she's about to uncover a horrifying crime, the man responsible is already on his way to work. This is Daniel Krug, Kristil's husband. He's heading to the office like it's just another ordinary workday, leaving behind the body of his wife hidden beneath the garage. He killed her and then simply walked away as if nothing had happened. Picture this. It's a completely normal, breezy Tuesday afternoon in December. A teenage girl is sitting in her high school classroom, probably staring blankly at a whiteboard, daydreaming about what she's going to eat for lunch, or texting her friends under her desk. Just another routine school day. Until her phone buzzes in her pocket. She pulls it out and sees a notification from her home's security cameras. She taps on it, expecting to see a delivery guy dropping off a package, or maybe her family dog doing something goofy in the front yard. But when the live stream loads, her heart absolutely drops into her stomach. She's staring at her own front lawn, but it is crawling with flashing blue and red police lights. Multiple patrol cars are blocking the driveway, and then she sees it. A black stretcher being wheeled out of her front door by paramedics. Her chest immediately tightens. Her hands are shaking so hard she can barely hold the phone. She tries to call her mom. It rings and rings, then goes straight to voicemail. She calls her dad. He finally picks up, but he is completely hysterical, sobbing uncontrollably into the receiver, telling her he's on his way to get her. Her mind is racing. She has this sick, heavy feeling that the absolute nightmare her family has been living for the past 4 months has finally, officially caught up to them. But what this young girl didn't know at that moment, what she couldn't possibly comprehend, was that she was watching the tragic final act of a months-long, terrifyingly calculated plot. A plot engineered not by some faceless stalker lurking in the shadows, but by the very man she called Dad. The man who was sleeping in the room next to hers, eating dinner at the same table, and pretending to protect them all from a monster he had created out of thin air. Crime, conspiracy, cults, serial killers, and absolute trash-bag monster husbands. All things that I love to consume, and I know you do too, you sick, twisted, beautiful, intellectually minded freaks. Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, grab a blanket, grab a snack, and buckle up. Because today we are diving into a case out of Broomfield, Colorado that is so deeply disturbing and rage-inducing, it is going to make you want to throw your shoe at the screen. We are talking about a guy who thought he was the ultimate criminal mastermind. A guy who literally tried to write a real-life psychological thriller, casting his own wife as the victim, his own children as the supporting characters, and himself as the tragic, heroic protector. He thought he was 10 steps ahead of everyone. He thought his digital trail was invisible. But spoiler alert, he was not a genius. He was just a pathetic, controlling narcissist who got absolutely wrecked by basic digital forensics. So, without further ado, let's unbuckle our seatbelts, go Mach 5 down the highway, slam on the brakes, and bust through this windshield into this solved case together. To understand how this absolute tragedy unfolded, we have to meet the incredible woman at the center of it, Kristil Krug. Kristil was 43 years old, highly educated, and a fiercely devoted mother of 3 beautiful kids. By all accounts, she was the glue that held their household together. She lived in a gorgeous, comfortable suburban home in Broomfield, Colorado. To the neighbors, they looked like the picture-perfect, successful American family. But behind closed doors, the reality was much more complicated, and things were starting to seriously fracture. Kristil and her husband, Daniel Krug, were going through a really rough patch. In fact, they had officially separated, but because of financial logistics and their absolute devotion to their children, they were still living under the same roof. It was that classic, awkward, tense arrangement where co-parents are trying to navigate parenting while sleeping in separate rooms. just trying to keep the peace until a permanent divorce can be finalized. Kristil was actively planning for her future. She was independent, she was strong, and she was determined to hold things together for her kids' sake until they graduated. But right when she was trying to build this new path for herself, her peaceful life was completely hijacked by a living hell. Out of nowhere, Kristil started receiving incredibly creepy, threatening messages. A faceless stalker seemed to know her every move. This stalker knew when she left the house, where she went, and what she was doing. Kristil became so consumed by fear that she was barely sleeping. She was constantly looking over her shoulder. But Kristil wasn't just a passive victim. She was incredibly organized and proactive. To protect herself and her children, she did everything right. She installed a massive network of security cameras all over the house, put dash cams in her car, and even started carrying a concealed handgun everywhere she went. She was so desperate for safety and evidence that she kept a highly detailed spreadsheet, a stalker log, documenting every single email, text, and bizarre occurrence, noting down the exact dates, times, and contents of the threats. She was actively building a case, hoping law enforcement could step in and end the terror. It all started back in September with a bizarre incident that seemed like a random stroke of bad luck. Daniel Krug called the Broomfield police to report a break-in. An officer, Officer Johnson, was dispatched to their home. Daniel met him in the driveway, looking flustered, and told a creepy story. He claimed that as he pulled into his driveway, he saw a suspicious figure run out of his garage, jump over his side gate, and take off running down the street.
So as I pulled in, I saw someone run out, jump over my gate, and take off that way.
Got it.
Daniel told the officer, "I didn't think to call you until my wife got home, and we realized the spare key we keep in the garage isn't there."
Until my wife got home recently, and we realized the spare key that we keep in the garage isn't there.
Let that sink in. A stranger allegedly broke into their garage and stole nothing except their spare house key. If someone has a family's spare key, they aren't just a random thief. They have an open invitation to come back whenever they want. The officer advised Daniel to change their locks immediately. But unknowingly, this break-in wasn't a random burglary. It was the opening move in a chess game that Daniel had been planning for months. It was step one of building a believable external threat. And sure enough, just 9 days later, the real nightmare began. Kristil woke up to a strange notification on her phone. It was an email from a name she hadn't thought about in over 20 years. Jack Anthony Holland. Anthony was an ex-boyfriend she had briefly dated as a teenager back in 1999. The message was short, direct, and incredibly crude. It said, "Hi Kristil, it's Anthony. Hope it's okay I looked you up. I go to Boulder every few weeks and thought we could hook up. You game?" At first, Kristil tried to brush it off. She hadn't spoken to Anthony in years, and back when they were teenagers, he was harmless. She ignored the message, hoping he would just go away. But the very next day, the stalker's tone took a sharp, aggressive turn. The phone buzzed again. "Are you there? You should say yes when I offer pity, whatever. I saw your pics. You got fat. You should kill yourself. Saw you at the dentist today. Your license plate is expired. Gotta fix that." Holy crap, you guys. Can you imagine the absolute suffocating panic Kristil felt reading that? This wasn't just some annoying ex sending a message from afar. This person was actively watching her. They knew she went to the dentist. They looked at her car. They knew her license plate. The faceless entity had stepped out of the digital world and was standing right next to her in her daily life. By late October, the psychological warfare intensified. Kristil received an email from the stalker with an attached photo. When she opened it, she gasped. It was a picture of her husband, Daniel, taken secretly outside his workplace. The caption read, "This your husband? Drives like a slow old lady. He needs to drive safe." Now the threat was no longer just about her. The stalker was targeting her family. But what made this even more insidious was the psychological poison the stalker was whispering to her children. The stalker had set up a fake profile on a website and began posting messages that made it look like Kristil was actively working with him. He sent messages hinting that Kristil was secretly plotting with her ex-boyfriend to get rid of Daniel so they could be together. Daniel took these fake posts and showed them to their kids, whispering to them that their mother was untrustworthy, that she was dangerous, and that she was trying to hurt their dad. He was actively brainwashing his own children to turn them against their mother, positioning himself as the pathetic, helpless target who needed their protection. It is a level of emotional abuse that is so sick it makes my stomach turn. Terrified and feeling completely isolated, I hired a private investigator to track down Anthony's addresses and digital footprint. On Halloween night, she finally called the police, completely desperate.
So, how can I help you tonight? What's going on?
Yeah, so I have an ex from a very long time ago who has occasionally found me on social media, and it's never been an issue until this month. So this month, I have received numerous text messages, and then today I got an email that is very threatening, and it escalated to the point that he took a recent picture of my husband at his work location. So the stalking is getting a little too aggressive at this point in time.
Okay.
So my last contact with this individual was 5 years ago, where I told him I was happily married. I had no interest in what he kept contacting me. He kind of blew things up and then blocked me. I blocked him, haven't heard from him since.
She sat down with Detective Andrew Martinez, a seasoned, tough investigator. She handed over her stalker logs, the emails, and the PI report. Martinez saw that whoever this Anthony was, he was using dozens of burner phone numbers and constantly switching digital identities. Martinez immediately began sending out search warrants to tech companies and cellular providers to get the IP addresses and routing data. But back in 2020, bureaucratic delays were massive. Tech companies took weeks, sometimes months, to return the data, and that delay would prove to be absolutely fatal. In early December, Kristil received one final text from the stalker. It looked like a miracle. The message said, "Hey, gorgeous, I can't visit you anymore. No more Colorado time. My girlfriend found out and doesn't want us talking. She says, you'll let the cops get me after you get rid of him." For the first time in 4 agonizing months, Kristil felt like she could finally breathe. The stalker was backing off. He was leaving the state. The nightmare was seemingly over. She and her family let their guard down. But in reality, the monster hadn't gone anywhere. He had just finished setting the stage, and he was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But wait, we need to pause the timeline right here, because to truly understand the psychological profile of the monster we are dealing with, we have to travel back in time. During this investigation, Detective Martinez decided to do some digging into Daniel Krug's past. He wanted to understand the family dynamic, so he pulled up old police reports, and what he stumbled upon was a closed, unresolved stalking complaint from years earlier that made the hair on his arms stand up. The victim of that old case was a woman named Carrie, who had dated Daniel Krug back when they were college students. Martinez tracked Carrie down and brought her in for an interview. And what Carrie revealed was a story so shockingly, chillingly identical to Kristil's that it blew the entire investigation wide open. Carrie explained that after she broke up with Daniel, he became incredibly emotional and desperate, crying and begging her not to leave. Shortly after, Carrie started receiving messages on AOL Instant Messenger. Yeah, old school, I know. From a guy named Tom, who claimed to be Daniel's roommate. Tom would message Carrie constantly, telling her how devastated Daniel was, how he was self-harming, and how she needed to talk to him. He was trying to manipulate her through guilt. Tom was so real that sometimes when Carrie called their dorm room, a guy would pick up and pretend to be Tom. But eventually, Carrie discovered a terrifying truth. Tom didn't exist. Tom was actually just Daniel changing his voice on the phone and typing from a different account. He had created a fake roommate identity just to spy on her and gain her sympathy. But it got so much worse. A few weeks later, Carrie and a group of friends went to a movie with some cadets from the Air Force Academy. It was a completely innocent night out. But a couple of days later, Carrie started getting threatening, harassing messages from a user named Nick Clark, who claimed to be an Air Force cadet. Nick told her, "I know you went out with those guys. I want you to know they came back to the academy and told everyone you slept with them. There's a rumor going around the whole academy that you're an easy target." It completely ruined Carrie's reputation and sabotaged her friendships. When Carrie started dating a different cadet named Mark Hansen, Nick Clark suddenly reappeared, acting like a concerned helper. He told Carrie, "We need to find out who is doing this to you. Let me help you." He actually set up a formal meeting for Carrie with the Office of Special Investigations, OSI, at the Air Force Academy. Carrie sat down with the military investigators. They laid out all the emails on the table and told her, "We had a forensic psychologist look at these emails. We've tracked them. The roommate Tom, the cadet Nick Clark, they are all the same person. It's Dan. Daniel Krug is doing this to you." But back then, because Daniel was smart enough to send all the messages from public library computers, the police couldn't get the definitive, hard IP matches to arrest him. The case was eventually closed without charges. Daniel had gotten away with it. He had successfully used fake digital identities, fabricated entire human beings, and manipulated military investigators just to terrorize an ex-girlfriend who dared to leave him. When Detective Martinez heard Carrie's story, a cold realization set in. The exact same playbook was being used on Kristil. The ex-boyfriend, Anthony Holland, was just the new version of Nick Clark and Tom. Daniel wasn't a victim of a stalker. He was the stalker.
The day started like any other. Daniel left the house, telling everyone he was heading to his office. Kristil got into her car and dropped the kids off at school. The second her car pulled away, neighborhood surveillance cameras captured a figure approaching the house. The person was wearing dark clothing and walked with a purposeful stride. They walked up to the front door, reached out, and placed a piece of blue masking tape directly over the Ring doorbell camera, blinding it. Then, they slipped inside the unlocked back door of the house and waited in the quiet garage. A short while later, Kristil drove back from the school run. She pulled her car into the garage, turned off the engine, and stepped out. She never even saw him coming. The attacker struck her violently in the head, knocking her to the ground, and then stabbed her straight through the heart, leaving her to bleed out on the cold concrete floor. In her purse, right next to her hand, was the concealed handgun she had carried for months. She never even had time to reach for it. Later that morning, Daniel Krug called police dispatch from his office. His voice was trembling, putting on a performance that would rival an Oscar-winning drama. He told the dispatcher,
Hi there. My name is Dan Krug. I don't think this is an emergency, but this feels really weird.
Okay.
My wife isn't responding to text messages or phone calls.
Okay.
We've had threats against us. We have both been targeted by a stalker.
Okay.
Threats have been made against my life.
Okay.
And threatening to kidnap her, which is why I'm nervous that she's not answering me.
Daniel didn't just call the police. He also called Kristil's mother, begging her to go over to the house and check on her daughter, knowingly sending an elderly woman straight into a horrific crime scene. When the first patrol officer arrived, the house was deathly quiet. He didn't see anything wrong from the street, but a gut feeling told him to check the garage. He peered inside and saw Kristil lying motionless. He booted the door open, ran inside, and immediately began performing desperate CPR, getting blood on his uniform. As the officer worked,
The garage door was lifted to allow medics in, and at that exact moment, Kristil's mother pulled up. She caught a brief, devastating glimpse of an officer performing chest compressions on her daughter. Officers rushed to shield her, leading her away, trying to comfort her while she sobbed in absolute terror. When Daniel arrived on the scene shortly after, he fell to his knees. He hugged Kristil's grieving mother, sobbing into her shoulder. But as the detectives watched him, they noticed something highly chilling. His face was contorted, he was making loud crying noises, but there were absolutely no tears. Not a single drop. It was a completely dry performance. But Daniel's perfect crime was about to meet the absolute buzzsaw of modern digital forensics. First, Detective Martinez looked at the Google Nest Home Security System app on Daniel's phone. Daniel had voluntarily given them permission to look at it, confident he had covered his tracks. But the detective noticed something bizarre. Every single camera in the house had been manually turned off at exactly 8:15 a.m., and they weren't turned back on until 10:15 a.m. The only camera that remained active was the one pointing outside the garage. The detective asked Daniel, "Who has the ability to go into the app and turn these cameras off?" Daniel stammered, looking caught off guard. Kristil, me, and settings, just us, I guess." This manually created camera gap perfectly locked the timeline of the murder between 8:15 a.m. and 10:15 a.m. Second, the exigent search warrants for the digital data finally came back. The tech companies revealed that the Anthony Holland Gmail account used to send the terrifying threats and the secret photo of Daniel at his work had been created and accessed using the exact IP addresses of the Wi-Fi network at Daniel Krug's office. Martinez confronted Daniel in the interrogation room. Both of those stalker accounts originated from IP addresses that trace back to your office Wi-Fi, Dan. How does that make sense? Daniel tried to squirm. Well, he took a photo of me at my office. Maybe he used the public Wi-Fi? But Martinez wasn't buying it. He had another card up his sleeve. Anthony Holland's ironclad alibi. Police had located the real Anthony Holland in Utah. He was severely intoxicated, had spent the entire morning of the murder with his family, and had a time-stamped shopping receipt placing him hundreds of miles away from Colorado. He hadn't seen or spoken to Kristil since 1999. There was absolutely no physical way he could have been in that garage. Then came the physical evidence of the burner phones. Cell tower records showed that the burner phone used to send the stalker texts was constantly pinging the exact same towers as Daniel's personal cell phone. Wherever Daniel went, the stalker phone went. He was literally carrying both devices in his pocket at the same time, terrorizing his wife while sitting in the same room. And finally, the nail in the coffin. Daniel's Google search history. The night before the murder, while his wife and children slept, Daniel had opened his browser and typed, "How hard would you have to hit someone in the head to make them unconscious?" And, "When is a head injury a cause for concern?" The mask had completely slipped. Martinez looked at Daniel and asked, "If you were watching these facts unfold in front of you in a movie, what would you say happened?" Daniel, realizing he was completely trapped, leaned back. He didn't scream, he didn't cry. He just looked at the detective with a cold, analytical glare and said, "I'm analytical at work, and I read and write fiction at home. I don't do crime drama. I don't know what any of this is." He then quietly asked for an attorney, and the interview was over. On December 16th, police officially issued an arrest warrant for first-degree murder. They tracked Daniel's car and swarmed him in a high-risk takedown while he was on his way to his young daughter's dance recital. He was handcuffed and hauled off to jail, his elaborate, fictional crime drama completely shattered by the reality of his own digital footprints.
It is just so incredibly sickening and vile to think about what this man put his family through. He didn't just steal a loving mother from 3 beautiful children. He actively, systematically manipulated those kids into doubting their own mother's safety and sanity. He used his own children's fears as chess pieces to set up his pathetic alibi. Kristil's mother, Linda, had that devastating gut intuition from the very beginning. She told detectives, "I have this feeling. I can't shake this question. Is he the one who's been doing this?" She knew. A mother's intuition is a powerful, sacred thing, and she was entirely right. Daniel Krug was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He will spend the rest of his days staring at a concrete wall, with plenty of time to write all the fiction he wants. Please let me know in the comments what you think about this case, and if there are other deep dives you want me to tackle next. I love you guys so much. Stay safe, look out for each other, and I will see your beautiful faces in the next one. Bye.